Scott Manning YouTube Sports Talk. I want to thank all of my loyal viewers for being with me tonight. Scott Manning YouTube College Football Podcast Pregame Show. The only pregame show on Friday night here on YouTube. I want to thank you guys for being with me here tonight. I have a lot to talk about. If you've seen the information, I have a lot to talk about. It's on the slate. If you see it, it's on the slate. I am going to talk about it tonight. I got the rundown, and you've already seen it. Let's go right into the show. I have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. The number 3 Ohio State Buckeyes do face the Minnesota Golden Gophers on Saturday, here at 12 noon tomorrow on Fox Sports 1. Nick Bosa is still out. Dwayne Haskins last Saturday threw for over 450 yards in their win against Indiana last week. Now, Minnesota is a whole different team. They've already got 2 losses already in the Big Ten season. So there's a lot to think about there. But also, too, like I said, Nick Bosa is still out. Draymond Jones and Robert Landers have done a great job of stepping up on the defense. But defensive end Chase Young, and I'll say this too, the defense still has a lot of work to do. Despite the fact they did win 49-26 last week, defensive player Draymond Jones has given the Ohio State defense a grade of a C+. And I have too. They have a lot to work with because the Buckeye defense has a lot to work on. I know they're minus Nick Bosa. I understand that. However, you cannot give up big plays like I saw last week against Indiana, and especially against what I saw against Penn State. It's a miracle we're talking about the Buckeyes being undefeated instead of the Nittany Lions. I've been thinking about that too. And everybody has said anything can happen, and it usually does. But Coach Urban Meyer has said, well, we got a lot to work on our defense. There's no way. We got a bye week after Minnesota. We got to face someone else, and we got a bye week. That gives us a chance to work on our defense. Well, the defense is doing their best. I know they don't have Nick Bosa, but Chase Young, Draymond Jones, Chase Young especially has done a fantastic job in stepping up. He's stepped up to the plate big time, but the defense still has a lot of work to do. They shouldn't have much of a problem against Minnesota because considering this, the Minnesota defense gave up 40-plus points in their losses to Maryland and Iowa in the last 2 games. But I do have 3 players on the Minnesota watch list. Zach Amernstand, the true freshman quarterback. Rodney Smith, he's another one to watch out for. And Antoine Winfield Jr. That's a couple things to think about for the Ohio State-Minnesota game on Saturday. The Buckeyes, like I said, they got Minnesota this week, and I think they got Purdue next week. Then they got a bye week. And then I'm not sure who they face. I'll get back to you on that. However, I feel good about Ohio State's chances now. But the defense has to answer the bell. And answer the bell they must. Because think about it. Our next big challenge is possibly going to be against Michigan State. And then we got Michigan after that. So there's a lot to think about there. But the bottom line is the Ohio State defense has to answer the bell, and they have to play better. And they got to show me something. Now the game is a noon kickoff on Fox Sports 1. Keep that in mind. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is another big game in the SEC. Number 2, Georgia. Number 13, LSU. As it stands right now, according to Las Vegas, they have Georgia down as a 7-point favorite, and the over-under is 50. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This game here is this is an important game on both sides. Georgia needs a win just to keep pace and prove that they're the king of the SEC East. LSU's needs a win just to stay alive, to stay into the discussion for the SEC championship. Georgia coach Kirby Smart said, "We're taking this game one game at a time because this is our first of 4 big challenges." I'm trying not to impersonate Kirby Smart, but I just can't help it. I can do it now because he's just a good old-fashioned Southern redneck. But in all seriousness, no. Georgia coach Kirby Smart said, "We got to play hard. We got 4 tough opponents here in the next 4 weeks. This is our first game against a ranked opponent since September, the opening weekend of the season against South Carolina. And I feel good about our chances. Jake Fromm, Elijah Holyfield, and Mikael Hardman, they've all stepped up. We took care of Vanderbilt last week. We'll have to wait and see what we do against LSU because LSU has a tough quarterback." And LSU coach Ed Orgeron said, "I feel good about I got a lot of respect for Georgia. I really do. They got a great team. They're great. They're the kings of the SEC East. Hopefully we can knock them off. But for LSU, I've already talked about the Georgia guys, Jake Fromm, Elijah Holyfield, Mecole Hardman. Now you know the LSU's big three, Joe Burrow, Nick Brissett, and Justin Jefferson. But I'm going to say this now. This is going to be a rough go for Georgia in the next 4 weeks. After this game, they got a bye week. And then after that, listen to this. They got to face number 14 Florida on the 27th of October, which is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I am not politically correct, by the way. And then they got to face Kentucky on November 3rd, number 18 Kentucky on the 3rd, and then they got number 21 Auburn on the 10th of November. So if you think this is going to be an easy go for Georgia after LSU, think again. Georgia, Florida, think about this for a minute. Georgia, Florida, the game in Jacksonville, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, could be decided. It could be decided who's the beast of the SEC East, because the Florida Gators are coming back after knocking off LSU last Saturday in the swamp. That was something special. But let's think about LSU. LSU needs to win. They need to win. They got to beat Georgia just to stay alive in the discussion for the SEC crown. LSU's got to beat Georgia no matter what. Because let's think about this for a minute. For LSU, it doesn't get any easier. After Georgia, it's number 24 Mississippi State on the 20th. Then on November 3rd, they got number 1 Alabama in Death Valley, and then after that, it's Arkansas. So you think it's going to get any easier for these two? Not really. But my thing is, if Georgia and LSU can answer the bell, whoever answers the bell first is going to be the winner. Joe Burrow is a great quarterback. The former Ohio State product went down to LSU, led him to a 5-0 start. They went from number 25 to number 5. Then they went down to the swamp down in Gainesville, and they got beat 27-19. What will happen on Saturday? What will happen on Saturday afternoon? Only time will tell that. Keep in mind, also too, think about this. Georgia is trying to stay in the hunt for the college football playoff. LSU has got to win this game just to stay alive in the SEC race. Now, I know it's the East versus the West. I understand that. But what I'm saying is, if LSU loses this game, they're out of it nationally. And that's all there is to it. They might win if they can knock off Alabama, they might win the SEC West, and that's about it. Joe Burrow has got to have the game of his life against Georgia tomorrow. And that's all there is to it. And the Georgia-LSU game can be seen tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 on CBS. You know Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson are going to be like, I got to make my picks, man. I'm going to go with Georgia. Because I love Kirby Smart. But you know, if Vern Lundquist was still at CBS, he'd be like, this is going to be something special, ladies and gentlemen. You better be ready. But it is what it is. And we'll get ready for a big game on tomorrow afternoon. Now, if you think the Georgia-LSU game is the only really big game at 3:30, I got news for you. We go from the Big Ten to the SEC East to the SEC. Now we head out west to the Pac-12. Number 7, Washington. Number 17, Oregon. This is a big one. The Pac-12, I've already said it, the Pac-12 will have a one-loss conference champion unless Colorado runs the table. I'm going to get to Colorado here in a few minutes, so stay tuned for that. But first, number 17, Washington, number 7, Washington, number 17, Oregon. Let's think about this. Justin Herbert, he's a 6'6" quarterback. He's going pro here in a year or two. When he's on the Oregon offense averages 503.6 yards per game and 45.6 points per game. But however, in the last 2 meetings that the Huskies have won, Washington has humiliated Oregon by a combined score of 108-24 in the last 2 meetings. There's something to think about there. But also, too, the Oregon defense has got to play better. They've allowed 24.4 points against per game, and they've allowed over 346.8 yards per game. So there's something to think about there. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think Oregon's playing much better than they have the last couple of years. Head coach Mario Cristobal has said, we got a great team. I feel good about our chances, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Washington Huskies. When Jake Browning is his quarterback, they've averaged 442.7 yards per game and 29.2 points per game. That's a little bit low. I'm a little bit worried about that. That worries me a little. That would worry me a little bit. However, their defense, the Washington defense, has really stepped up in a big way. They've only allowed 13.7 points against per game, and they've only allowed 304.5 yards per game. That's it. If it's a defensive battle, I give it to the Huskies. If it turns into a high-flying Pac-12 shootout like everybody's expected, give it to Oregon. Because Justin Herbert knows how to get the job done. But also, too, now, yes, the Huskies have Jake Browning, but they have another weapon, Myles Gaskin. He's going to be the key to who wins this game on Saturday. And believe me, come 3:30, my remote control is going to be getting a workout. Because there's two big games going on. The SEC, the Pac-12. The Pac-12 North could be decided. Because unless Colorado runs the table, the Pac-12 is going to have a one-loss conference champion. And that's all there is to it. And if you think it gets any easier for these guys, think about this. Oregon, after Washington, the next three games are Washington State, Arizona, and UCLA. That's for Oregon. But for the Huskies, they got Colorado next Saturday. Unless Colorado can beat USC, we're going to have another major showdown. And then after that, Washington faces the Cal Golden Bears on the 27th. And then on November 3rd, they face Stanford. And you know Stanford's going in the wrong direction. They're going... But anyway, I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to be a game that could be decided late. If the Huskies defense shows up and they can stop Justin Herbert, give it to the Huskies. And if Oregon can start throwing home run balls like there's no tomorrow, give it to Oregon. Because think about it. Justin Herbert's going to be hard to get down. He's 6'6". And if the Husky defense can get to him and get to him early, they got a shot. As it stands right now, according to Las Vegas, Washington is a 3-point favorite. And the over-under for this game is 58. They should have made it about 70 to 75, to be honest with you. It's just my take, but I'm just going by what Las Vegas says. Now, we've already talked about one Big Ten team, Ohio State. And I've already gone down south, down to the SEC, and crisscrossed the country to the Pac-12. Now we crisscross the country back in the other direction to Ann Arbor, Michigan. And here's why. Saturday night on ABC, number 15 Wisconsin faces number 12 Michigan with a lot at stake. And I mean a lot at stake. The Big Ten is going to be a very interesting Big Ten race going forward. And think about this for a minute. Michigan quarterback Shea Patterson has been doing much better ever since that loss to Notre Dame. And if the Michigan defense can hold Alex Hornibrook in check, I think they've got it. However, Alex Hornibrook, now think about this for Wisconsin. Under him, the Wisconsin Badgers have had averaged 480.2 yards and 33.8 points per game. And the points against per game is only 16.4. And they've only allowed 349 yards total offense against in the season. If it weren't for that loss to BYU, we'd be talking about Wisconsin being undefeated right now. But for Michigan, Shea Patterson, he's averaged about 400. When he's under center, Michigan offense averages 420.7 yards per game and 38.2 points per game. And their defense has only allowed 230.5 yards per game. Very impressive. And their points against per game has only been 15.8. If the Michigan defense steps up, look out. Because it's going to be a long night for Wisconsin. And both teams realize, now both teams already have one loss. However, whoever loses this game could be out of it nationally. And I said this after the loss to BYU. If Alex Hornibrook plays average for the rest of the season, Wisconsin's only good enough to win the Big Ten West, and that's it. But for Michigan, Jim Harbaugh is coaching for his job. He's got one bad loss to Notre Dame already. If he loses, and I've said it, there's 4 more games on the Michigan watch list that I had. I had Penn State, I had Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan State and Ohio State. Lose 2 of those 4, he's out the door. He'll be gone. Jim Harbaugh will be gone by the end of the season. You can mark my words on that, ladies and gentlemen. That's all there is to it. But now keep in mind, Wisconsin does have another weapon in Jonathan Taylor. If Jonathan Taylor runs the ball and goes crazy over against the Michigan defense, I think Wisconsin's going to win this one. But I'm thinking about this too. If I was Wisconsin, if I was a Wisconsin coaching staff, I would have had them sit down and watch the Michigan Notre Dame game, watch their game film, and see what Notre Dame did. They can exploit the defense. Everybody knows the Big Ten is up for grabs. But if Michigan loses to Wisconsin, Michigan could be out of it nationally, and they know it. Wisconsin, on the other hand, they'll be good enough to win the Big Ten West if Alex Hornibrook plays average tomorrow. And if Jonathan Taylor has a bad game, Wisconsin may only be good enough to win the Big Ten West, and that's it. They'll be out of it nationally. So there's a lot at stake tomorrow night in Ann Arbor. And as it stands right now, according to Las Vegas, and I'm kind of on the fence with this, they have Michigan down as a 9-point favorite. I think it's going to be a little bit closer. I really do. And the over-under is 49. I'm kind of on the fence with that too. And I'm going to say this now. There's a lot at stake here for both teams, because thinking about it for Michigan, after Wisconsin, they got Michigan State on October 20th. They got Penn State on the 3rd of November. Then they got an easy game against Rutgers. 2 of the next 3 are going to be tough for Michigan after a bye week. But Wisconsin, after they get done facing Michigan, they got an easier road. They face Illinois on the 20th. They got Northwestern on the 27th. And then they got Rutgers on the 3rd. So let's think about this. There's a lot at stake in the Big Ten race. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens as the Big Ten gets crazy. And I'm sure every Ohio State fan is going to be watching the Wisconsin-Michigan game tomorrow, because you got to keep in mind, Ohio State faces Michigan on the 24th of November in Columbus here at the Horseshoe. And they're going to be watching the Wisconsin game, because they could be facing Wisconsin. The winner of this game, the winner of the Michigan-Ohio State game could possibly be facing Wisconsin for the Big Ten championship. So if you think there's a lot at stake, there is. And there may be a lot for Ohio State as well. So keep that in mind as we're going forward. All right. The next game I want to talk about is number 19 Colorado versus USC. Now, I know USC is unranked, but I want to talk about this because this got my attention. USC is a 7-point favorite over the Colorado Buffaloes. You know, I've been thinking about this. I said this the other day, and I shared this on a post, on one of my posts on my Facebook page. I said, if the Colorado Buffaloes run the table and they go undefeated, I will buy my dad's supper. I'll buy my dad's supper out at his favorite restaurant. I do mean it. If the Colorado Buffaloes can do it, can they do it? We'll have to wait and see on that. However, I will say this: the Colorado Buffaloes have been very impressive. Colorado coach Mike McIntyre has said, our team has really played their hearts out this season. And for us to be the last team standing undefeated in the Pac-12 is remarkable. USC is a tough team. I'm not taking anything away from them. USC head coach Clay Helton said, this could be our chance to get back into the top 25. This could be our chance to play. We can have the chance to play spoiler for somebody. Well, I'll tell you right now, you can spoil Colorado's season if you knock them off. But that game remains to be seen. Think about this. Look at this matchup, the quarterback matchup. Colorado's Steven Montez, 1,420 yards passing this season, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. JT Daniels, he's had his struggles. Only 1,257 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 INTs this season. The running back battle. Think about this. Running back Trayvon McMillan for Colorado, 526 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. Running back Cedric Ware for USC, 335 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns. That's it for him. He hasn't been impressive this season. Let's think about this for a minute. The wide receiver battle. Wide receiver Laveska Shemalatin Jr. for Colorado, 708 reception yards, 6 touchdowns. Wide receiver for USC, wide receiver Amara St. Brown. 326 receiving yards total and 2 touchdowns this season. USC's 3-2. That's a disappointing season for them, and it's hard to believe. If it would have been USC 5-0 versus a 3-2 Colorado team, it would be a no-brainer. This game, it would be a no-brainer. But USC is a 7-point favorite because I think they're going along with the fact that the game is at the Coliseum out in LA, out in Southern California. The game is at the Coliseum. But let's think about this for a minute. If somebody would have told me that it would be Colorado being 5-0 again or over USC, I wouldn't have believed it when the season started. But I'll be honest with you. USC has been reduced to the role of spoiler. And they can spoil the party for Colorado. They can spoil it for now they don't face Washington or Stanford. They don't face Washington at all or Oregon. But they can still spoil the party for somebody. And that somebody could be Colorado. And let's think about it. If that happens, we'll have to wait and see there. Excuse me. Think about this for a minute. If somebody would now think about this. USC has had a bad season. They lost to Texas, and they got their doors blown off by somebody else. Now the next 3 games for USC after Colorado are they got Utah on October 20th, Arizona State on the 27th, Oregon State on the 3rd. But for Colorado, it doesn't get any easier for them because right afterwards, if they survive USC, congratulations, you get a matchup against the Washington Huskies. And then you got Oregon State, then Arizona. So it's not going to get any easier for Colorado. You survive USC, it's going to be remarkable. But if you can knock off Washington, you're really going to shake up the Pac-12 race. The Pac-12 race is, in my opinion, the Pac-12 is going to have a one-loss conference champion unless Colorado does what we think is next to near impossible. But no matter what happens here, the Colorado Buffaloes have had a great season so far, no matter what. And Coach Mike McIntyre and company, they have nothing to hang their heads about. And that's the bottom line. All right. Those are the matchups. Now, we have 4 one-loss teams. I want to talk about this for a minute. I'm going to ask you guys a question, and I'm going to do the up and down segment on this one. It's one question, but I'm going to give you 4 teams, and you can either vote up or down, and I'll even give you my take. Which one of these 4 one-loss teams has the best chance to make the college football playoff? LSU, Penn State, Texas, or Washington? Let's see. Some people said LSU. 31% of the people said LSU has a chance. Do you vote up on LSU or do you vote down? On that one, I am going to vote down. Here's why. LSU got upset and got knocked off over Florida. And LSU has to face Alabama on the 3rd of November. If they can survive Alabama, then I'll change my mind. But until then, I'm going to vote that down because LSU's already got one bad loss to Florida. And I'm not sure about it because the matchup on November 3rd against Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa is playing the game of his life. And the Alabama offense is just clicking on all cylinders. So unless LSU upsets Alabama, I'm going to vote that one down. And I'm giving it 2 thumbs down instead of 1 because LSU doesn't have a prayer against Alabama. Grant you the game's in Death Valley. But LSU's already got one bad loss. And the committee's going to take a real good look at that. Next team I want to talk about, Penn State. The Penn State Nittany Lions. They lost to Ohio State a couple weeks ago. Do you think Penn State makes the playoff? Do you vote up or down? For that one, for now, I am going to vote down. Here's why. Penn State lost to Ohio State, and Penn State has to face Wisconsin. Penn State faces Michigan State tomorrow. And they got to face Wisconsin, and they got to face Michigan. So there's a lot there for Penn State to think about. So unless Penn State can knock off Michigan, can beat Michigan or beat Wisconsin, or they can beat both of them, I am going to vote that one down. And that's your reason why. Now, the other team is Texas. Now, Texas got 24% of the vote. Now, consider what the Longhorns have done. And considering everything, does a one-loss Texas team get into the college football playoff? Do you vote that one up or do you vote that one down? For that one, I'm going to vote that up. And here's why. Texas has to face West Virginia on November 3rd. That's a big one. And if Sam Ehlinger can do to West Virginia what he did against Oklahoma, I think a one-loss Texas team could get in. I really do. And here's why. Sam Ehlinger, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and you got a great, and now I know the Texas defense looked pitiful last Saturday in the Red River Shootout against Oklahoma. I'll give you that. But Sam Ehlinger, he took the game on his shoulders last week. 314 yards passing, 2 touchdowns through the air, and then he carried the ball 19 times for 72 yards. He had 3 touchdowns on the ground. He took the Red River Shootout on his shoulders. And I'm going to tell you right now, when Texas faces West Virginia, that's exactly what Sam Ehlinger is going to have to do. He's got to find holes through the West Virginia defense. But I'm going to tell you right now, Sam Ehlinger versus Will Grier, that would be a matchup anywhere, in my opinion. So with that in mind, considering what Texas did to Oklahoma on Saturday, and if they can knock off West Virginia, I am going to, for now, I am going to vote that one up. And that's very simple. Now, the last team, Washington Huskies. They only got 10% of the vote. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Do you vote that one up or do you vote that one down? Well, considering everything, and if you look into the information, the Pac-12 as a whole is pretty weak. So, with that in mind, I have to vote that one down. And here's why. The Pac-12 as a whole is pretty weak. They're going to have a one-loss conference champion unless Colorado runs the table. Now, the Washington Huskies are a great team. Don't get me wrong. However, the Pac-12 as a whole is weak. Stanford, they've got 2 losses already. USC, they've got 2 losses. UCLA, I don't even want to talk about it. Now, Washington and Oregon, that could decide the Pac-12 North. But the Pac-12 as a whole is pretty weak. Oregon has a 1 loss. Washington has a 1. Washington lost to Auburn in the opening weekend of the season. Something to think about there. Oregon lost to Stanford. That Stanford loss is looking pretty bad. And Stanford's looking pretty weak at the moment. They lost to the Utah Utes last Saturday night or into the wee hours of the morning. So with that in mind, if you think about it, not to take anything away from the Huskies, Jake Browning, Myles Gaskin, Aaron Fuller and company, they've had a great season so far. But as far as them being a one-loss team that makes the college football playoff, I am going to have to vote that one down. I hate to do it, but considering the Pac-12 is weak right now, the Pac-12 is a weak conference, and they're going to have a one-loss conference champion, no matter what. So that concludes the up-down segment of this show. And if you have a chance to watch the show, please vote up or down, and we'll have a little bit of fun. All right. Here's the next question, and I want to ask this question. I'm not going to vote up or down, but you can leave your opinions anyway. Is Notre Dame finally going to not push a Power 5 champion out of the college football playoff? You know, somebody asked me that question the other day. Notre Dame's 6-0. Some people have said they've got a weak schedule. But let's think about this for a minute. Notre Dame could possibly do it. Think about this for a minute. The Big 12. Oklahoma's loss to Texas last week wasn't eliminating, but it was devastating to the entire conference. Right now, Oklahoma has a 14% chance of getting into the college football playoff. But let's think about this for a minute. Texas, West Virginia. If West Virginia can beat Texas on November 3rd, and if they can find a way to beat Oklahoma on November 23rd, West Virginia could get in. There's an outside shot. Will Grier against Sam Ehlinger on November 3rd. That's going to be a matchup. Will Grier versus Kyler Murray on November 23rd. That's going to be a matchup. But I want you to think about this too. Oklahoma losing to Texas was devastating to the entire conference if you stop and think about it. Because you know West Virginia's got to face Oklahoma yet. And you know Texas knocked off Oklahoma last Saturday, and it ultimately cost Mike Stoops his job. But think about this for a minute. West Virginia is going to have a battle on November 3rd against Texas. And that game's on the road in Austin. So think about that there too. But the Pac-12 looks bad as a whole. We're going to have a one-loss conference champion unless Colorado runs the table. I know you're tired of hearing me saying it, but it's got to be worth the repeating. Let's think about this. Washington, they lost to Auburn in the opening week of the season. Auburn's already got 2 losses. Oregon, they lost to Stanford. Stanford's already got 2 losses. Notre Dame and Utah. But let's assume this. Let's say number 1 Alabama runs the table, wins the SEC. Let's assume number 3 Ohio State runs the table, wins the Big Ten. And let's assume that number 4 Clemson runs the table, wins the ACC. We could have a real debate on putting in Notre Dame or we could have a debate on putting in Notre Dame in or a one-loss Georgia team. There's a lot to think about there too. But let me say this. Georgia, their schedule doesn't get any easier. After they face LSU, they got to face number 14 Florida, number 18 Kentucky, number 21 Auburn. And you know Auburn's been a real headache to Georgia over the last many years. But let's be honest. Everybody's asked me, who would you put in? And I'll get to that in a second. But the debate has been Notre Dame's schedule is weak. They've only had 2 ranked opponents, Michigan, Stanford. They've already beaten them. The only real test, in my opinion, left for Notre Dame is USC at the Coliseum in the final game of the season. And USC's already got 2 bad losses. So there's a lot to think about there. Notre Dame is 6-0. They face a 3-3 Pitt team tomorrow at 2:30 on NBC. So there's something to think about there too. Florida State, everybody thought Virginia Tech would give them a battle. Notre Dame went into Blacksburg, ran all over Virginia Tech like they were nothing. The real other contest that I'm worried about, let's think about it. Florida State, they're struggling. They got to face Notre Dame. Syracuse, they're struggling. USC, they've already got 2 losses. That's a bad season for them. But Georgia, it all comes down, does the committee put in an undefeated Notre Dame team or do they put a one-loss Georgia team in? That's a very hard call for a lot of people. And everybody's asked me, who would you put in? And that, which leads me to my closing thoughts for this show. A lot of people have asked me. And now, before I go any further, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for my closing thoughts on this show. The college football playoffs after week 6 is going to be very interesting. 4 sports writers at ESPN have given their predictions on who gets into the college football playoff. And I'm going to tell you who those 4 are. Andrea Alderson, Edward Ashchoff, Adam Rittenberg, and Mark Schallback have all given their opinions. Andrea Alderson, she has Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Notre Dame 4. That's Andrea Alderson. Edward Ashcroft has it number 1 Alabama, number 2 Clemson, Ohio State 3, Georgia 4. Adam Rittenberg has it Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Notre Dame 3, Georgia 4. Mark Schallback has it Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Georgia. And to be honest with you, I have to agree with Adam Rittenberg and Mark Schallback. I have it as Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Notre Dame 3, Georgia 4. That's my college football playoff prediction after week 6 of the season. So for now, I agree with Adam Rittenberg and Mark Schallback because they've got it right as far as I'm concerned. But the debate is who gets in, who gets that last college football playoff spot. Would it be an undefeated Notre Dame team, or would it be a one-loss Georgia team? If I had to pick, if somebody were to ask me who would you pick, I would go with undefeated Notre Dame because they've earned it. If you put a one-loss Georgia team and they lose the SEC championship, it's like rewarding them for losing a conference championship. I'm sorry. I'm a Georgia guy. I'm a Bulldog fan. I love Kirby Smart. However, Notre Dame is going to go undefeated. A lot of people are going to complain and say, oh, Notre Dame had a cupcake schedule. Look, think about this for a second. Notre Dame. I said it. I had 3 games on the Notre Dame watch list. Michigan to open the season, Stanford and USC. Notre Dame ran over Michigan like they were nothing in the opener. Then later on, everybody said Notre Dame, Stanford, that'd be a battle. Notre Dame went through them like they were nothing. They still have USC at the Coliseum on November 24th. I grant you. However, if Notre Dame wins out, and if Georgia loses the SEC championship game, based on that, I would put Notre Dame in over Georgia any day of the week. And you can go to the bank with that. And that's all there is to it. And I'm going to say this now. I'm going to say this to you, and I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible. If you're undefeated, I know if you're undefeated and you don't play in a conference, but if you're undefeated, if you're a team like Notre Dame, you deserve consideration. A lot of people are going to complain that it's a cupcake schedule. Tough. Now, Georgia, they've got Florida, Kentucky, Auburn, all ranked after LSU. It's not going to get any easier for the Bulldogs. And they'll possibly have to face Alabama in the SEC championship game, and they're just clicking on all cylinders right now. So, Notre Dame would get my vote to be in the college football playoff. Georgia would be on the outside looking in. And that's all I have to say tonight. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. I want to thank you guys so much for being with me here tonight. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. My name is Scott Manning. It's very simple. Just type my name, Scott Manning. Look for this pretty face, and you'll see. Look for this pretty face. Click down. Please subscribe, and you'll see all the sports videos that I have done so far. I will be back tomorrow night at 11:30 or midnight for the Scott Manning YouTube College Football Podcast post-game show. We're going to have a lot to talk about there. I want to thank you. We have a lot to talk about. I'll give you a wrap-up on all the games today. If there are any upsets along the way, I'll do a quick snippet during the day if I need to. But I want to thank you guys so much for being with me here tonight. You guys have a great night. And thank you so much for being with me. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here because my voice is going away. And I want to thank you guys for being with me here tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night between 11:30 and midnight. Until then, this is Scott Manning saying good night, good luck, and thank you. And I thank you and good night. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for being with me, and God bless.